Welcome to a Music Minute. It's Monday and here we are. Today our hymn traveled all over the world before it finally made it to the United States and became famous here. So it has a well-traveled history. So let's talk about that today. Its birthplace was in Sweden, and that was when a 26-year-old minister wrote the poem, "O Mighty God." His name was Karl Boberg, and that was in 1886. Several years later, it was being sung to an old Swedish melody, but it didn't pick up there. So it kind of faded away. And then in 1907, Manfred von Glen translated it into German. And then 5 years after that, a Russian pastor, Ivan Prokhanov, made a Russian adaptation of that same song, "O Mighty God." And then, early in the 1920s, a Reverend and Mrs. Stuart K. Hine left their home in England and went on to Poland as missionaries. And it was there that they heard the Russian version of "O Mighty God," or "O Stor Gud," "O Mighty God," that's Boberg's version. And then Hine was so moved by it, he modified it, and he started working on the words and expanding that, and he also kind of rearranged the Swedish melody, made some changes, so a lot of changes and adaptations. And then it was Reverend Hine, he said that he was inspired by the Carpathian Mountains there when he was in Poland and roaming around Russia. And the Carpathian Mountains, they're a range of mountains all through Central Europe over there. I think it's the third longest European mountain range. So he said he was inspired by them and their beauty. He says particularly verse 1 was composed when he was caught up in a thunderstorm in a Carpathian village. Verse 2, as he heard birds were singing near the Romanian border. And then in verse 3, as he witnessed many of the Carpathian mountain dwellers coming to Christ. And then verse 4, he says he wrote when he was back home in Great Britain. And so that's that time, the early 1900s. So we've gotten a complete rewrite of this original song that started in Sweden. Now, Dr. J. Edwin Orr, he heard the song, and at this time it was called "How Great Thou Art." He heard it being sung by Naga tribes people in Assam, in India, of all places. And so Orr brings it back to America. So he's American, he brings it back to America. He shows it to a music publisher in California, Tim Spencer, and together they reach out to Dr. Hine in Great Britain and ask him to work with them, and they get it published and copyrighted. And so that's when it's copyrighted. So after that, this song becomes famous when George Beverly Shea takes an interest in the piece. So at that time, we were having the Billy Graham Crusades were going on. And so while George Beverly Shea doesn't actually sing it in the 1954 Billy Graham Crusade in London, he does introduce it to audiences in, still not America, in Toronto, Canada, the following year. So in 1955, George Beverly Shea sings it in Toronto, Canada. And then finally, in 1957, at the Billy Graham New York City Crusade, it was sung there by George Beverly Shea, and they sang it over 99 times. So, bam. After that, it becomes immensely popular and beloved here in the United States. It's still one of the most popular hymns sung today across denominations, across our country. So beautiful text. Now you know what inspired it, that the Carpathian Mountains over there in Central Europe, and that it got its start in Sweden. Almighty God. So very interesting. Hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about How Great Thou Art, and we will sing it this Sunday. Bye-bye.